everybody, it's Sharon here. Welcome back to my channel for those who are returning, and welcome to any new subscribers that may be visiting for the first time. I'm working on organising my craft space. I've been doing little bits behind the scene, trying to work on it each day, and I watched a video just recently by Inklipse, I believe it was. I'd never come across his channel before on YouTube until I saw this video, and it was about how to organize your craft space. And something he said in that video really rung true for me. He was talking about how he had organized his craft space, and he did a tour of his craft space, and I will link that video below so that you can see. And he talked about the fact that it had been a work in progress over time, that it wasn't something he just threw together really quickly. It was something that he worked on achieving over a period of time, because he was using his craft space, and he made a comment during his video about how you really need to look at your own craft space and determine what you need to make things work for you. And that comment, I just want to say thank you to Inklipse, because that comment has been quite valuable. And I found myself a couple of days ago looking at my space, and honestly, I had things everywhere. I had piles of paperwork in front of me for my current journal. I had my signatures, and I had a pile of paperwork. Well, actually, I had two piles of paperwork to my left with papers that I was using currently. And I'm talking like stacks. You can't see very well probably, but stacks of papers. And I just went, you know what, I need to work out what I need to make this space work for me. So I took some time and I had to think about it, and I thought to myself, if I could just get these papers off my desk and organize somehow, it would really help. It would clear not only my craft space but my mind. All the clutter has been really messing with me. So I have some manila folders here, and to start with, I popped my paperwork. So I've got some papers from digital papers from Artsology in here, and I had printed these off, and I had a stack of different papers from different people, and I had them layered alternatively in piles. And I went, maybe if I just tuck them away in the manila folder, that would help. And it kind of did, but I can't see what is in the folder, and I can't stand them up properly because they fall out everywhere. And so I was thinking about Tracie Fox's Altered notebooks, her challenge, I think it was last month. And sadly, I didn't have a chance to participate. I've had lots of things going on here, and it just didn't happen for me. And I would have loved to have been a part of the challenge, but unfortunately, I just couldn't fit it in. But it got me thinking about that challenge in particular, and how Tracie had taken something that was fairly plain and ordinary, but very useful, and had altered it to make it really beautiful. And so I was looking at my manila folders, and I went, how can I do that with these? So I'm going to do one with you. Now, I have printed a couple of sheets from Artsology, and I have done them borderless because they will fit my folder better. You can do your folders however you like. This is how I've decided to do mine. So I'm going to walk you through my process. It's very, very simple, but I think it's very effective. So I'm just going to take the papers out of my folder, and I have my scoreboard, and I will just make sure that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm opening my folder up. Now, I should have mentioned, this is a foolscap folder. If I turn it that way. So I have a box of foolscap folders here. I purchased them from my local Officeworks, and I have found them quite handy in my space. And I did toy with getting foolscap or A4, and at the time I remembered thinking that if I got the foolscap and I wanted A4, I could always cut it down to A4 and I would have some leftover scraps that I could play with in my journal. So I went with the foolscaps, and because I have the foolscaps here, they are perfect for this idea. So I'm opening it up and I'm scoring it at 12 inches. Being careful not to go over the scoreboard. I did actually do one of these and I went over the scoreboard and I ripped my manila folder. That made me very sad, but I now have manila folder I can use for journaling cards. So win or loss, I'm not sure. It still works for me. And then folding it over, or turning it over, sorry, and scoring at 12 inches on the other side. And then I don't need my scoreboard anymore. Okay, and then taking my folder and I'm just going to fold this up. Okay, and that gives me a nice little tuck spot to pop my papers into, my digital papers. So if I fold this over, they're tucked away very nicely in there, and they can't fall out the bottom. So if I have it sitting on a shelf and I pick it up, they're not going to fall out of the bottom as I pick it up. That was one of my concerns. So from there, I had to decide how to decorate it. So I will show you the one I've already done, and I have papers in here. So this is what I'm working towards. I'll turn it this way, sorry. This is what I'm working towards, and I have, if I open it up, I have my digital papers inside. I have this little flap here. I haven't decorated the flap down the bottom. I did consider it and am still considering it, but I decided that I wouldn't do it for now because I was worried about the bulk across the fold in particular. I could cut and glue either side, but I was worried about it not having enough wiggle room. And depending on how many papers you want to keep inside your folder, you may decide to do that. I have had another idea just before I turn the camera on, actually. Leaving this flap closed and creating a, I'll see if I can do it on this side, creating another tab down this side and perhaps attaching it to the right here and across the bottom, or to the left on this side and across the bottom. Just maybe a 1 to 2 inch tab of manila folder, cutting that and gluing it so that I have a tuck spot, and I could tuck it into the tuck spot and then still lift this flap. So I would leave this flap as is, tucking my papers into the tuck spot and then lifting the flap up. So I may go ahead and try that, I'm not sure, but that would stop all of the paperwork from falling out while being stored or when being moved around. So, and then making it pretty on the outside was purely for my own benefit. So this one here, I actually took a sheet of music paper that was bound into the book by stitching, and I simply laid my manila folder out upside down, of course. Sorry, I've got bits everywhere. Turned it this way, and I'm not sure that's focusing very well for you guys, I'm sorry. Let's see if I can lift you up, won't be a moment. Okay, I laid my manila folder out, and using the same process I will use to attach my paper to my next project, I simply laid my paper out like this, and I attached it. And what I did was, I've just noticed that my paper isn't quite long enough. So what I did was, these manila folders have a long piece, a long piece and a shorter piece. I attached it closer to, like, on the edge of the shorter piece, and then I cut the tiniest sliver off the long part, and then just rounded my corner. So I was able to make that sheet work, but, and I say but because of the following reason. It worked perfectly, and I was really happy with it. Am really happy with it. But when I covered it up with my digital, I realized I wasn't actually seeing any of that beautiful music paper from underneath. So I was like, do I really want to waste my music paper on doing that? And you might decide to do yours different. You could just leave it as music paper if you wanted to. So I started to rethink what I could use to give me a similar effect. Now I have a roll, and I've cut this piece off, but it's just a roll of butcher's paper, I think it's called. I purchased it from my local Kmart. It is in the children's drawing and art section, and it's just a roll of paper that you can use for children to draw on, basically. And I keep a roll here. I've used it as my blotting paper if I've been doing mixed media and that sort of thing. And I decided that the colours were very similar. The paper is probably not quite as thick as the music paper, but I'm going to give the butcher's paper a try and see how it comes out. To do that, I've cut a piece off that is big enough to fit. I just want to make it a little bit smaller, and I probably should have done this off camera because I think I'm going to run out of room. Okay, turning it around the opposite direction. And I'm just going to, and I may even be lucky enough to get 2 manila folders out of this one sheet, which is fabulous value. I think the butcher's paper that I'm using, I think, is only about $5 a roll, so it's by no means expensive. And my reason for doing this, you could just put the digital paper straight over the top of your manila folder and not go through this part of the process if you wanted to. When I first put the music paper down, I was simply trying to take away from the fact that it's a manila folder. So I think, aside from that tear, I may just be able to get another manila folder out of that piece. Yes, so the reason I put the music paper down was I was altering the manila folder to try and take away the fact that it is a manila folder. So I'm using this paper for the same reason, and that will fit perfectly. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ink my edges, guys. Sorry about that. And you don't have to do this part of the process, obviously, it's up to you. If I have any pieces that aren't quite covered, this will help disguise it, which is why I'm doing it. I don't think I need to ink across the bottom, but I am, just in case I change my mind about how I attach it. Okay, so when I first made my folder, I was making it to store papers that I was using for my current project. That was my idea. I do actually have a suspension file in a filing cabinet that I do keep my digitals, but I'm finding more and more that I want them on my desk at hand and not tucked away where I forget what I have. And the folder I'm talking about is actually to my left. I have a little filing cabinet under my desk, so it's not like they're a long way away or anything like that, but I just forget that they're there. So apparently I'm very hands-on. I like things to be at arm's reach, and I think that's part of the reason I've ended up with so many papers on my desk, because I haven't been putting them away. I've just been keeping them here so that I can grab for them easily when I want them. So okay, just inking right across here. And I'm going to do underneath as well, just in case. As you can see, I'm not being particularly careful about it. I'm just giving it all a nice coverage. Okay, and I think that's pretty good. Okay, and so from there, now I have this score tape. I'm not even sure. I think it's 9mm. 9mm score tape. I don't know about inches. It's about 3/8 of an inch. It's just what I have, what I can get easily. So I'm going to take this, and the reason I'm using the score tape, and if you don't have it, you don't have to use score tape, you could use just your wet glue, but I'm using the score tape because I wanted to make sure that it is well adhered all the way around my edges, so that I try and avoid any lifting as I'm pulling it in and off my desk or shelf or wherever it is I decide to store it. So I decided the score tape would give me the best possible ability to get as close to the edge as possible. So I'm taking my score tape, and I don't know if you can see, yes you can, taking my score tape, and I'm just going to run it right across my edge, trying to get as close to my edge as possible. All the way along. And I should have let you know, my score tape that I'm using is actually a Portercraft brand, and I can get my packaging and show you. So this is the one I'm using here. I am using it because, as I said, it's readily available to me, and I can pick it up from my local bargain buys, actually is where I purchased this from. So I get two 20-meter rolls, they're 9mm as I mentioned, for $3.50. I haven't really compared price to see whether there are cheaper options or better options out there. Like I said, I haven't used double-sided tape a lot in the past. In actual fact, the supply that I have had for quite some time. And just recently, as I said, I've been working on storage options for my space, and I've been using a lot of it. So by all means, if you're aware of a more economical option, give me a shout out and let me know. But $3.50 for 2 rolls seems pretty good to me. Actually, I might just tear that. I've just been using my ruler and tearing it, and then across the sides as well. I probably had already torn them with my ruler. I lost track of what I was doing for a second there. Okay, tearing that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same down the center on both sides, just for extra stability and to help secure it. More so because there'll be movement down the spine as it bends. And as you can see, I do have a little buckling from where that is folding, but that's okay, we can sort that out. And then down the center of this side. And that's all the score tape we need for now. And I'm just looking for my bone folder, and I'm just going to burnish those down. You can see where I've folded there. And part of the reason this came up was because when I stopped crafting, I haven't been able to pop those papers away that I have had on my desk. Like they sit on my desk because I want them nice and handy, and I haven't had a way of storing them that they're still nice and handy and I can reach for them easily without having to pull out drawers and go through folders or suspension folders and things like that. So I decided that I wanted some way of being able to clean up my space basically before or when I stop crafting, so that when I come in the next time it is a neat and tidy space. And just recently, well, up until now, because I haven't had an option to store them, I just walk away and I leave that mess everywhere. So I'm just using my fabric glue, and I'm going to pop fabric glue in the middle. Now I'm going to do one side at a time just because it's a large sheet and I feel like it gives me more option to to not mess up really. Okay, I'm just trying to remember how I do this. So you could lift your tape now, but there's a reason I don't, and I'll show you why in a moment. So just letting my glue come down. Yes, so to be able to clean my space and have my space fresh but still have my papers handy that I've been using for my project, that's kind of the reason behind me doing this. And I've only had my one folder organised for, I think I did it a couple of days ago, and I love it. I was in my craft room late last night, and I decided before I finished up that, or when I finished up, that I wanted to clean my desk off. And some of my paperwork I had popped into manila folders. They're not embellished, like they're not altered, but they have been scored. So I popped those into, oh, this glue is strong. I popped those into those folders, and I have a nice little stack of folders to my left here. And I can't stand them up at the moment because I haven't finished embellishing them, or sorry, altering them. But even having them in the folders is so much better. Okay, so I'm just making sure I've got good coverage. Now, if I had my score tape off, I wouldn't be able to have wiggle room to move that just now. It would attach quite easily to my score tape and wouldn't have allowed me. I've been caught out before when I've put paper down on glue that's got score tape around the outside, and it catches the score tape in one spot and then it tears. So that's why I've done it this way. Okay, and I'm going to burnish that down as best I can, and I'm kind of moving my glue towards the center away from the score tape. Okay, and then I've just got my little Cricut tool that I use to lift the tape up, and if you lift the corners, because the glue is still wet, you can get in there to, whoops, pull the tape away. Whoops, and I forgot that that was a continuous piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear that. So I tore it in the center just so that I was only attaching one half. Just turning this around. It's funny how having light can make you see things that you wouldn't normally see. Okay, and I'm going to do the center tape first on this side. So I'm just pulling that from underneath, not lifting my paper too much because it is adhered at this end. And then this last one. And I'm just going to fold that tape in. And again, this will be right across the bottom. So I'm just tearing that off. And I'm going to burnish that down. Okay, and then I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to fold this over, and I'm just going to hold that down with my ruler. I don't know if you can see. You can. Just holding that down with my ruler because it has got that curl in it and it will want to curl back on me. Okay, and I'm going to take my fabric glue and I'm going to glue this side. So just running all the way around the edges. I don't think I explained that when I did the last one. Sorry, the first side. I was too busy yapping about something else. And then just filling in the center as best I can. You don't want too much glue, you do want it to be... I may run into trauma with my little blob there, so I may see if I can spread that out a little bit. It tends to, well, firstly it can make the paper a little bit wet, especially paper like butcher's paper, because it's not terribly thick. Okay. And from there, and I might take that center piece of tape off. And just pressing that down. Okay, and then from there it's just a case of taking the rest of your score tape away. Well, sorry, not taking the score tape away, taking the backing of the score tape away. And again with my rounded corner, I'm just lifting that tape up, pushing it down with my nail. And that's done. Okay, so that's well adhered. And I'm just going to see if I can, folding it gently. I am noticing this paper is a little bit more see-through than my music paper, but that's okay. Okay, and I'm going to, oops, bumping things. Just going to take this paper away so I can use my cutting mat. And I think just going to line this up. And I just have a Stanley knife here. It's getting a little bit old and grungy, but it does the job. And I'm just going to, I'm not pushing overly hard because I don't want to shred the paper. I'm not doing the bottom just yet, so leaving the bottom, and I'm not throwing these scraps away. I could use those in collage or something like that. We don't like to waste things. Okay, and I'm just going to take my scissors and oops, just rounding my corner. How can I do this? I'll do it this way. Oops. Okay. Oops. Oh, and I do need to round this corner. And then from there, I'm going to take my score tape, and I do have a slightly wider score tape. I'm not sure. I think this is 12 mil. So it's roughly 1/2 inch. And I'm going to put score tape across, just moving some of my things from in front of me. So I'm going to put it across the actual paper, not the manila folder, and I'm going to get it as close to the edge on here as I can, so the edge closest to me. Because again, I want it to adhere across that edge so it doesn't lift or catch or... And I do have a slightly bigger lip on this paper than I had on the music paper, which could be a good thing, I'm thinking. I did notice just before I turned the camera on that my tiny little strip of paper that I have across the bottom inside that folder had lifted slightly, and it did press back down. But I'm not sure whether it will stay like that, so we'll wait and see. And I've just decided I'm going to pop a strip across the bottom of the manila folder, and that will catch that little piece of paper in there that doesn't have any tape on it. And you could have used, if you have different sizes of tape, you could have used a smaller size score tape for this little piece, or possibly could have used wet glue. The 12 mil tape is also Portercraft, and it also came from Bargain Buys, but I think it only comes in single packets. It doesn't come in a double packet. And just burnishing down that tape. Okay, and then taking my little Cricut tool, you can use whatever you have to lift the score tape off. Sorry, the score tape backing off. Oops. Okay, oops, drop my tool. And I'm going to fold all the way across. I'm not attaching, I'm just folding. And then I'm going to fold in and press from the center out. So that's that side done, and then on the left side. And my bone folder, just pressing that down. Okay, and again, just reminding it where I want it to fold. And I'm just going lightly. Okay, and then I'm going to ink. Oh, I've lost my ink. It buried itself. Just going to ink around the edge. This is purely personal. You don't have to ink if you don't want to. I like that look, and I decided that I don't need to do this if I don't want to, but it makes me happy. So the prettier my craft space is, I think the more creative I will feel and the more I will enjoy my space. So I'm taking that little bit of extra time for me. Okay. I am noticing the difference with this butcher's paper. There is a bit of a tooth, I suppose you could say, to the paper. It's got a little bit of a grit to the touch. So I'm wondering actually if it will pick up things off my table or what have you. It feels like it might be a little bit, I can't even think of the word. I do want to ink across the bottom of that actually. Like a tooth, with the tooth that you get in gesso, and it helps pick things up. I feel like this might do the same, but we'll wait and see. It is a cheaper option, that's for sure, and I'm not losing any of the beautiful detail of that music paper by covering it over. So, and again, I could just leave it as the manila folder, but I wanted it to be a little bit different. Okay, so this is where I was saying I could take a strip of manila folder and attach it down the side here. I would probably just attach it down the outside and across the bottom, creating a little flap to tuck my papers into, and then this would fold up to stop anything from falling out of the bottom. So as I said, that's an option. I am going to try it this way without and just see how it goes, but so that you know the options that you have, you can make a decision for yourself as to how you'd like to go about it. Okay, so from there, I've just taken, as I said, 2 papers from the person whose kit this is, and I need to decide which way. I think I really like this one as my colour actually. This one's speaking to me for the front. So my idea is that I've printed a sheet of paper from the designer that I'm going to use each individual folder for. So as I said, this one is for Artsology, and that gives me a visual when it's sitting on my desk or on my shelf or whatever. If I pick that folder up, it gives me a really quick visual of whose paper it is. And the other thing I'm thinking is perhaps attaching a label to the front, and I don't know whether I will or I won't, but I could possibly attach a label to the front and have that designer's name on the label as well. And that could be really helpful for perhaps a designer that you've only just started purchasing from and you're not necessarily familiar with their work yet. Or if you have a really large collection and you just don't remember who your papers are from because you have so many beautiful choices. And the other reason I decided that a label could be good is because I do have people like Artsology who I have purchased labels from, and it's a reminder to me that I do have labels from that designer. So I have ephemera folders that I keep the labels in. They're separate to the papers, but it is a reminder to me that they're available. Okay, so I'm just going to pop my paper back down in my workspace. just taking my tape, and I'm again going to go all the way around the outside of this sheet for the same reason that I did it with the baking paper. It's the baking paper with the butcher's paper, is that I want my piece of paper to attach as close to the edge as possible all the way around. I've had a few little projects on the go. I've made some new ephemera folders. My desk is looking really pretty, I have to say. I love it. Okay, so just burnishing that down. And I knew I'd move my wet glue. So same process as with the butcher's paper. I'm leaving my tape on there, and I'm covering my paper with my wet glue, which, as you know, I'm using the fabric glue. My quick dry that I love, I haven't been able to purchase. I usually get that from my local Spotlight, and they haven't had it in stock. And I don't know if any of you have the same issue. I've noticed when I'm doing my wet glue like this, if I go anti-clockwise, I don't seem to get as much glue to come out, whereas if I go clockwise, it comes out quite nicely. And I think that has to do with the angle that I'm holding the bottle at. So I don't know if that little tip will help anybody else, but I was using my wet glue and I was circling it, and my circle action was producing very little result. And I was like, what is going on? How could I be that uncoordinated at gluing? But that's what I've put it down to. The angle of my hand was wrong, and it wasn't allowing the flow for the glue to come out. Okay, so I'm going to just try and center that as best I can. I'm not pressing down at this stage. And this is why I haven't taken my strips off, the backing strips off my tape yet, so that I can get my placement right. And I'm going to just burnish that down now that I have my placement. Oh gosh, that's pretty. And then I'm going to take my Cricut tool and I'm going to lift my tape. So sometimes when I'm doing this, I'll just pull it out slightly like that and leave it sit like that while I pull them all out. And I have found curling the paper actually makes it really easy to, hoping you can see what I'm doing, makes it really easy to pull that backing paper off just using my fingernail. I stumbled upon that accidentally last night actually, and it worked a treat. So of course, pulling the paper back, you don't want to pull too far that you crease your paper, but enough that you can access underneath. And so because we've got the wet glue down already, that paper is just going to fall into place, and you just need to burnish that down. So just inking all the way around the edge, and I'm just repeating the process. I'm going to put this piece on the back of my folder. And using my tape, and that's the wrong tape. Only wrong because it was the bigger one. I want the smaller one. And same process all the way around, as close to the edge as possible. And again, just using my ruler to tear. Oops. So for those of you who haven't used score tape, I don't know if you noticed, but when I first put my score tape down, I line it up as best I can, and then I use my finger, my pointer finger, on my opposite hand, and I just lightly press it in place, and I mean lightly. See if I can show you. So just lining it up, and I'm just using my finger or fingernail, fingertip, fingernail, whichever you have, to gently hold that there, and that still gives me movement. I'm hoping you can see that, to get my straight edge across the paper. And then lining up my straight edge all across the bottom, and not pressing down until I have my edges straight. So I'm not sure if that helps anybody. I'm probably preaching to the converted, and you all either know how to do it the best way it works for you, or like me, you've trialed and errored and come up with your own style. But it did take me a little while to get there. So I just thought I would share what I had learnt the hard way. Okay. So just burnishing that down. And again, just making sure my paper's up the right way. And my little piece of paper towel is such an eyesore on my desk. I need something that I can cover it over with so I can't see it, but it's so convenient. I use it all the time. I cleaned up my desk last night, and I took a moment to appreciate how clean my desk was, because it's been some time since I've had a clean workspace like that when I walked away, and probably back when I first started crafting. And then there was this disgusting dirty piece of paper towel, because I don't necessarily throw it out until it's seen its last legs. And I was like, my desk would look so much better if that wasn't on there, but necessary evil. With all respect to paper towel, because it's very helpful. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. I do that often. I can tell you how it's best done, but I don't always remember myself when I'm gluing. Okay. And I keep my folder, I keep my folder closed for this so that I get a true perspective of the space I have to cover. to help me center it. That doesn't look too bad to me. Okay, so just going to burnish that down. Gosh, that's pretty. And again, taking my, just checking that I'm still videoing because I'm a little bit nervous about the space on my system. Okay, just lifting those pieces so that they're easy to access. And again, I'm going to see if I can do it. Oh, not so easy with that one. There we go. Okay, so just pulling those off. And burnishing it down. Such a satisfying feeling to burnish down those edges and know that they're all attached. Okay, and you could totally leave it there. How pretty is that, guys? But with mine, I did add a little fabric strip down the center. And I'm going to do the same because I think it looks lovely and I want my craft space to be pretty. So, I think this is the one that I cut crooked. Or, sorry, it must have been the end. I might get a different piece, I think. I didn't cut it. It was on the cut edge and I tore a piece off and it came out crooked. So I just want a piece that's big enough to go over the edges, and that way you won't notice that that's even uneven if it's opened out. Not that it matters, but you know, guess it was just something to say, really. Okay, just tearing that because it's fun. No, I tear it because it gives me a straight edge. For those of you who are fabric illiterate, as I am, don't quote anything I say because I'm not a sewer and I do have very limited knowledge as far as fabric and sewing is concerned, but calico is one of my favorites. And I am learning as I go. Okay, and I just want a little bit at the top and just a little bit at the bottom. Save that piece for a rainy day. Taking away my loose edges and making sure I have it the right way around. And for those of you who don't know, the fabric, I don't know if I can show you, this piece of fabric, this calico, if I look at it this way, it's more concave. This way, it's more flat. I don't know if you can notice on camera. So for me, this is the back of the fabric. That's how I tell. Now, somebody may comment below and say, you're way off, that's so wrong, but that's how I judge it. Okay, so I'm folding this in half and I'm just going to attach this with my fabric glue. I'm getting low. I've done a lot of gluing lately. And I'm just using the fabric as a guide as to where I need to glue. A little tip I picked up from watching Gayle Agostinelli. Thank you, Gayle. And I am going to go reasonably close to my edge. I'm trying not to wiggle my fabric around, so I'm holding it in place at the bottom. And I'm not pressing too hard on that because I don't want it to seep through the fabric, through the calico. And then from there, just lifting up and doing the bottom section. Okay. I'm just pulling it a little tight. Just helps remove any little creases. I'm just checking it's fairly even. Pretty happy with that. And I am going to add a little bit more glue down here, just in that corner. And you can see that seeped out a little bit, so that's because I had a little bit excess on there. I probably should have let it. I found if you let this glue dry a little bit before pressing it down, sometimes you don't get that seepage. I don't want that excess, so I'm going to see if I can do it this way. So I'm pressing it, but I'm not pressing it overly hard. Just checking all of my corners, top and bottom. Okay. I think my little piece of paper towel has just about had it. But that's the end of our altered file folder. So that gives me then a spot to pop my papers for Artsology. I will trim this off slightly, but I'm going to wait for that to dry. So I'll trim it probably half off and then just fray the edges at the bottom. And when that's sitting on my shelf and I pick it up to have a look at it, I will know by looking at that paper that that is Artsology. So whatever is inside will be Artsology papers. So I hope this idea helps somebody else create some organisation in their craft space, as well as giving you something really pretty to look at. And I'll just show you the other one. Aren't they pretty? I love them. So enjoy what you create, everybody. It's lots of fun, and happy crafting. I will see you soon. Bye for now.